please forgive me if there's some problems. But I don't know about y'all. This is the craziest time in ever. I don't know. I'd hate to say that, but I think those of y'all that are a little bit older than me may say, no, this time was pretty crazy. This time was crazy, and I'll take your word for it. But I don't know. I think people have taken to using 2020 as a curse word because it's so bad. You can't. I mean, it's not even like all of 2020. It's like the last 5 months, and it's nuts. It's crazy. If you just think of all the craziness that we've had. I mean, with just the pandemic is one thing, but you add what's the whole list of things that we could add to it? Seriously, murder hornets. Those things. The species from Japan that's was up in the Northwest. That's weird. Then you have the two hurricanes. I think they called them dancing hurricanes. Because that's not the worst term I've ever heard, or the scariest. Luckily, I think for the most part we've gotten through that. I don't know. I haven't checked the weather report, and we got 0 rain from that. So usually when we get rain up here, that's pretty bad down there. But I know there was some. There might have been some people that lost had some things damaged down there. And I know there were some tornadoes that were a result in Arkansas. So this is just a hectic time. And you add on the fact that we're having to wear masks everywhere we go. That's just a new normal, unfortunately. I've been in the schools, and there is a good part of the mask wearing for the schools is that the kids are better behaved. That's a bonus. I've never heard. I had to ask somebody about public school, and I was like, is public school like this? Kids are so well behaved. And they're like, no, not even close. And they're like, well, it's China Spring, but it's not like this. Kids are better behaved. They're listening. They're walking where they need to walk, but right now we're experiencing fear and anxiety. We don't know what tomorrow's going to hold. Maybe they say we have to wear hazmat suits tomorrow to walk into Walmart or church or whatever. Yeah, and people in Texas are like, no. We don't know what tomorrow holds. And and just not knowing what tomorrow holds, or even having an idea of the possibility of what tomorrow holds, can be fear-inducing, can cause us anxiety. And people do strange things when fear is involved. And so one of the things that I always grew up hearing about, and was always probably blown out of proportion. And I'm going to say none of y'all were alive, but I could be wrong. But it was the War of the Worlds broadcast back in 1938. 1939. And let me just read this little synopsis for you. And if y'all are familiar with it, it's great. But The War of the Worlds is an episode of the American radio drama anthology series, The Mercury Theater on the Air, directed and narrated by actor and future filmmaker Orson Welles, as an adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel, The War of the Worlds. It was performed and broadcast live as a Halloween episode at 8 p.m. on Sunday, October 30th, 1938, over the Columbia Broadcasting System radio network. The episode became famous for allegedly causing panic among its listening audience. Through the scale of that panic, though the scale of panic is disputed, as the program had relatively few listeners. Now, the 1 hour program began with the theme music for the Mercury Theater on the Air and an announcement that the evening show was an adaptation of The War of the Worlds. Orson Welles then read a prologue which was closely based on the opening of H.G. Wells' novel, modified slightly to move the story setting to 1939. For about the next 20 minutes, the broadcast was presented as a typical evening of radio programming being interrupted by a series of news bulletins. The first few news flashes occur during a presentation of live music and describe a series of odd explosions observed on Mars, followed by a seemingly unrelated report of an unusual object falling on a farm in Groves Mill, New Jersey. The musical program then returns briefly before being interrupted by a live report from Grover's Mill, where police officials and a crowd of curious onlookers have surrounded the strange cylindrical object that fell from the sky. The situation escalates when Martians emerge from the cylinder and attack using a heat ray, which the panicked reporter at the scene describes until his audio feed abruptly goes dead. This is followed by a rapid series of increasingly alarming news updates detailing a devastating alien invasion taking place around the world and the futile efforts of the U.S. military to stop it. The first portion of the show climaxes with another live report from a Manhattan rooftop as giant Martian war machines release clouds of poisonous smoke across New York City, and so on. Eventually, news reporters reported that it was a radio broadcast, that it was acting, and they had built this up as kind of, it was a show. That's essentially what it was. And now there weren't that many people watching, and the number of people that actually believed it was probably very minimal. But to me, it was something that they had no idea. I mean, it could have been done a little bit scarier. He didn't have to say it was an adaptation of War of the Worlds. He could have just said, this is happening. It would have been deceptive, but it could have been just an idea that it was based on a show, or he could have made it more realistic, but he didn't. But it induced fear in people. And fear is what we are experiencing right now. It's scary. And Christians are not immune to fear. We are human. We sin. We can be, I guess, prone to anxiety and depression, and we are normal in that aspect. And so I looked at kind of the different types of fears that there are. And I found, according to Psychology Today, 5 fears. All right? And there's kind of a hierarchy of fear. Okay? And these fears are in, I guess, the level of fear, or the commonality of it. You think of a pyramid. So the more, I guess the 5, that as I go up, they get more powerful and rare as well. Okay? So mutilation is the fear of losing any part or of our precious bodily structure. The thought of having our body's boundaries invaded or losing the integrity of any organ, body part, or natural function. These are usually come from anxiety. This relates to anxiety about animals, such as bugs, spiders, snakes, or other creepy things arising from the fear of mutilation. I experienced this morning. Just walking here, I don't know how many of y'all like spiders. I have an irrational fear about them. If it's a big wolf spider, I'm fine. Even though I had one almost land on my shoulder as I was getting in the shower. But it's more the little teeny brown recluses or the black widows that are going to sneak up on you when you're digging in the attic or something like that. Those are the ones that I really dislike. But was walking to church, wasn't paying attention, walked into a huge spider web, so bad that it was all over my face. And the only thing that gave me any relief whatsoever is when I took it off and I threw it down, I saw the spider. So I was like, okay, good, it's not on me. There's some level of relief there, but so you have that, the fear of mutilation, you have the loss of autonomy, the fear of being immobilized or paralyzed, restricted, overwhelmed, entrapped, imprisoned, smothered. You can call it, it's commonly known as claustrophobia, or it can also extend to social interactions and relationships. You have the fear of separation, which is the fear of abandonment, rejection, and loss of connectedness. It is, it's like the silent treatment when imposed by a group, and it can have devastating effect on its target. And then you also have the ego death, which is the fear of humiliation, shame, or any other mechanism of profound self-disapproval. And I think the fear of shame and stuff like that is very powerful. But think about those different things and what we have gone through in this pandemic. Fear of mutilation, it's there. The fear of what, if we get this disease, what is the altering effects? If it's not death, you still hear of some effect of people that are struggling with breathing or some damage to the lungs. The loss of autonomy, well, that's definitely there. You have the fear of being restricted or overwhelmed and trapped in prison. Anybody feeling that after a few months in the house? Not being able to go out? Fear of separation. This is biggest with the kids, but also it's with us too. We can make do, but for some of us, we thrive on it. That is our lifeblood. That gives us energy. That gives us social interaction is big, but for us, seeing Sam McKenzie have that lack of interaction with their friends is devastating. And what I've heard from parents with only kids, it's even more. And so you have these fears that are so prevalent. One of the fears I had growing up was, and I'm old enough to live in the Cold War and played video games that had to do with the Cold War. And I remember watching a movie, and I was probably about 8 or 9. And growing up, and y'all can attest to this, if y'all lived more during the Cold War than I did, was that there was one enemy, and it was Russia. It was, everything Russian was bad. And I saw a movie growing up that I shouldn't have watched. And it wasn't like a horror movie, I think it was PG-13. It was Red Dawn, of all things. Red Dawn, if you're not familiar, is the Soviet invasion of the US with the help of Cuba. China, surprisingly, is on our side during that, but there's a nuclear war, and it starts with a group of kids in high school in Colorado that see Russian paratroopers land on their football field. And to me, that was like, that's got to be the scariest thing I've ever seen as an 8-year-old or 9-year-old. And so that's something it's a fear growing up. Kids nowadays, and it's kind of the same generation for me, I was in college when it happened, is 9/11. So you have different mindsets, you have different fears, and that hierarchy of fears is really growing and feeding us right now, but it shouldn't. It is hurting us, and it is hurting our faith and our witness to this world. Because, and there's many different reasons why. Well, there's a Northwestern study that says, that people are likely to believe in false reports that are based on their fears, their beliefs, and prejudices they already have. So when we have fear surrounding us in so many different ways, it does not encourage the best of us. So take my fear of spiders, and if the coronavirus has some spider element, then I'm gonna go nuts with that. But it's feeding into our fears and our conspiracy theories and our beliefs, and it's not helping who we are meant to be as Christians. So we have got to get away. And when the title of the sermon is Finding Truth in a Post-Truth Era, here's what post-truth is if you've never heard of that. It's a philosophical and political concept for the disappearance of shared objective standards for truth. And a circuitous slippage, I can say that, between facts or alternative facts, knowledge, opinion, belief, and truth. So what is happening in this era is the truth is getting bombarded by so many alternative facts that we are having trouble seeing what is truth. But this shouldn't be for us. Okay? We are not immune to that, to being in this area. But we have a foundation to start with. And that foundation is found in the truth of Jesus Christ. The Bible says it explicitly. John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. But if you look at our passage for today, it is John 8:31 through 32. To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you hold on to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So Jesus is the truth. Jesus is the one who will set us free. But let's look at that verse more specifically. All right? You must consistently hold on to biblical teaching. In John 8:31, it says, Jesus said, if you hold on to my teaching, I'm adding that you have to consistently hold on. Think of it as learning a language. When you learn a language, and I'm not fluent in anything, I've tried to be fluent in Spanish, and I get find different ways that we can learn, and also diversify the types of learning that we can do. So learn in person with each other. So Bible study is great for some people. That small group, that interaction, that is fantastic. I learned better that way than I ever did in a church service. But I also learned amazing, to me, putting it into practice does better as well. But I don't neglect coming here. Any and every way we can to grab hold of the teaching and to consistently grab hold of it to make us stronger is what we need to do. Because this world is pulling everything we have and everything we learn every day about Christ is distorting it and is pulling it away. This is our truth. And in a post-truth manner, we are hearing things that are not truth. We hear them all the time. We see them on Facebook. We see them on the news. We see it, whatever. We hear and see it consistently. So if we're not here, and this is probably what the problem is that we haven't been able to meet as often as we can or as consistently as we have in the past. Let's look at the next section. A true disciple knows the truth. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? But there's a certain level of knowledge. When you think about it, okay, let's have a raise of hand. Who considers himself a true Texan? Okay, was everybody born here? Yeah? Okay. Don't judge me, please. I was not born here. I was born in Chicago. I lived there for 6 months. And my mom moved to San Antonio. And at least it wasn't Austin. And so, people are like, you're not truly a Texan. You were born in, you're a Yankee. You were born in Chicago. And I'm like, I lived here my whole life. I'm older than you. I've lived here longer. So what does it take to be a true Texan? Do you have to be born here? Do you have to, do you have to live here a certain number of years? What is a true Texan? And I was trying to think of some things that make you a true Texan. All right? Have you had Texas barbecue? Do you like it? That's maybe not a good requirement. Have you sat in your car? The other day I sat in my car with the air conditioning on and was still sweating. That's probably a good, let's see. And you can probably make a list of different things. Have you been to a rodeo? Have you been to a lake? I don't know. You can go through this whole list of what it takes to be a Texan. But I think, and maybe it's the attitude. Maybe that's just what it comes down to. When you have that obnoxious but friendly attitude, then maybe you're a Texan. When you think everything's better in Texas, then yeah, you're a Texan. Okay, maybe that's it. What does it take to be a Wacoan? Because I feel like I'm now necessarily a Wacoan because I've lived here longer, but I never grew up here. But let's see, I think it has to come down. Do you hate tourists downtown? Maybe that's a bonus. Let's see, do you hate the fact that they're doing construction on 35? Probably, So what takes a true Texan? And so one of the things that are Wacoan, for me, it's always been related to sports. Knowing a true fan. A true fan knows his team or her team. If I asked, if somebody goes, oh yeah, I'm a huge, Dallas Cowboys fan. I'm like, oh, really? And I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I know somebody that follows football, and I can probably pick it out by how they act and how they speak, and how what they wear. So I'll go, hey, who's your favorite player? Oh, I don't know, what's his name? What do you mean? It's the Cowboys. They're all over the media. You got to know who they are. Is it Dak? Is it Zeke? Is it somebody like that? So you start to realize maybe they're not a fan. They like the idea of being a fan, but they're not a true fan. And if you think about asking these same or similar questions of a person going, and I've had this experience, is you go, oh yeah, I'm a Christian too. Well, that's great. What church do you go to? Oh, I go to Highland. Oh, that's awesome. I love I know the pastor there. He's great. Oh yeah, he's awesome. Have you ever met John? Who's John? John Jarvis, pastor at Highland. Oh, well, we just moved there. Or there's some excuse, and you're like, okay, hey, how involved are you? And you start to see through various questions that there are true believers, and they know the truth. One of the best quotes I ever heard was from an author, one of my favorite authors, and it's Henry Newman. And he said, "It is the Christ in me who recognizes the Christ in you." And usually when you come up to somebody and you know of by their speech, by their actions, you know it. There's just something about it. Something that the Holy Spirit is telling you. This is a Christian right here. And it's not our part to judge somebody where they are in their faith. It's saying that a true disciple knows the truth and recognizes the truth in others. So it is, if you've been here enough, and most of y'all are here consistently, and I have no doubt that I've seen the Christ in you all because of your consistency. And some of y'all, there are certain people in church and people I see in church, it's usually the people that are older than me. Because usually the people that are older than me have been going to church much longer and much more consistently than I have in my life. And to me, that alone is respect. But when I get to know them and I say, you know more than me. You may be a Sunday school teacher for 30 years, but your experience does not, and your experience and your consistency in church does not match what I learned in seminary. It doesn't match. And so for me, truth recognizes truth. And lastly, the last part of our passage is, then you will know the truth. If you hold on to that teaching consistently and you are truly his disciples, then you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. That freedom is what we are forgetting. We are forgetting that if you look at Revelation 21:4, he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. That truth that we know is free. It is freeing us from the worries of this world. We can forget what happens outside here when it comes to the fear that we're experiencing. We can say, if COVID is the death of us, that's fine. I know where I'm going. We have hope. It is freeing us from that. That doesn't mean like just walk outside and start going up to people and without your mask. And that means Christ has freed us with the truth, and knowing that, and that truth is that there is a God. He did send his son. His son died on the cross for us, and was raised from the dead, and we have salvation in him. If you get it as simple as that, that is the truth. And from everything else, it should be easy to distinguish what is truth in this world. But truth it frees us from the shame of sin, from the hatred in our hearts, from the chaos of this world, from death. It gives us peace. It gives us hope. It takes away our anxiety and our fear, because it is the firm foundation. It is that house on the rock that provides that foundation for us, so that we aren't swayed by the winds of fear in this world. It gives us the confidence to be who Christ wants us to be and needs us to be on this earth. So, whatever happens tomorrow, we know where we're going. If death overtakes us, we know where we're going. If we lose our job, we lose a loved one, there's so many different things that can happen to us. But we are together as a community of believers with the same purpose of worshiping Christ. And from there, we know the truth in what's going on despite the chaos of this world.